So one thing we have to acknowledge is a lot of people do not like Gotham Knights because I think they've been misled. That's one aspect of it. The second side is some people don't necessarily like the game because it flies in the face of the norms of what you should do with superhero games. In my last video, I was talking a little bit about stats in Gotham Knights, how your characters are fortified with different gear items that do have unique stats that set them apart from other items, that give you different, numerical values, sometimes gives you abilities in terms of how things work. Many reviewers have categorized the gear system to just be a power level system. Luke Stevens is the biggest culprit. Some others have said, why do we need these items in these games? A culprit of that is skill up. And I remember watching their reviews, and I'll show you that this particular style of game does have an audience that it appeals to. And as some people wrongly think, when you're looking at these different stats in your gear, they actually make the items unique. In fact, one of my audience members disagreed with me. They said, having stats don't make gear special. Look at exotics in Destiny or legendaries in Borderlands. Those top tier weapons are insane, which is highly important in a looter. I agree, but these two games you just referenced are not looter in terms of RPG. They're not RPG looters. If you want to see an RPG looter, we can definitely look at some examples, and I'll be happy to show you one of them that is actually very popular. Ladies and gentlemen, say hello to Tom Clancy's The Division 2. This is a game where I've dropped a lot of hours, and I can tell you that if you do not get your stats right in this game, you're not going to enjoy it. This is also another game that flew in the face of the norms and what was expected from a lot of the designs in a lot of shooters. The whole Gotham Knights thing that people kind of expect to follow maybe the Arkham formula or the Spider-Man formula or whatever it is, most times developers can go ahead and say forget about it. Now, if I'm playing a game like The Division and I show you my gear, you're going to see items that have just logos, and when you read through their stats, you're not really going to see anything that is that special. But then once I start to use the gear in gameplay, you start seeing that they're consequential. Admittedly, The Division has a deeper gear game than Destiny, than Gotham Knights, than Borderlands. Even Destiny players that play The Division 2 in a crossover, they'll tell you, Destiny and all, we like it, but The Division gives you the room to min-max and pretty much combine whatever the heck you want. In some weapon and some stats that they have, you don't even have to shoot too many bullets like this one weapon that I'm going to show you. Because it's so interesting that I remember how a lot of Tom Clancy fans and shooter fans had a very adverse reaction to the first Division game. They were like, I just can't get behind the fact that everybody is a bullet sponge. That was pretty much one of the very first complaints that a lot of people had. But then once you learn how to build, once you learn how to use the game's mechanics, you find out that it's not because they're bullet sponges, it's just because you decided not to play the game as it was designed, which is as an RPG. Now, I'm going to go into this area here, and I'm going to basically try to take on these enemy NPCs. They're some of the most difficult in the game. The game is set on heroic difficulty. This is the, second to the hardest tier. The hardest tier is only specific to specific areas and missions, so I can't play legendary here. But as that person said, their legendary gear in Borderlands and, say, Destiny, we call exotic here in The Division. So this is my exotic pestilence, and I'll show you how it works. If I shoot an enemy NPC a certain number of rounds, they eventually start to take damage even when I'm no longer shooting. Look, that enemy NPC is going to die regardless of whatever, happens because they're just taking damage. They're dead. See that? What's that guy doing over there? He's trying to throw this whatever my way. He's trying to damage me or trying to jam my weapons. But I can play the whole, encounter without actually shooting my weapon at all. I can literally sit here and cover. In fact, you know what? Let me walk away and watch my gear, my skills, based on my stats, shred this entire camp of bad guys. And look at all my damage that's being done. Another set of bad guys are going to go ahead and spawn after this is done, but you're going to see how they're going to eventually get eaten up. Just watch. There you go. Another set of baddies are going to spawn, and they're going to get melted, pretty much. Now, I have a set of gear items where I have to run around and pick up these things to make my gear stronger. It's basically how this gear set, this style of play is a run around play style. So I'm just going to get back in cover, and we're just going to see these guys suffer. They're running away. They don't even want to stay and fight because they know that they're outgunned. There it is. Those are the bad guys coming out. I'm just gonna hit them with just the electric grenade. It doesn't really do any damage to them, and watch them all just suffer. This is a shooter, guys. I'm not shooting nothing. I'm letting my stats, my gear, my equipment do the work. They're all synergizing in the way that I've built them. And they're shredding these guys that have tons and tons of health pool. If you want to calculate my DPS here and how much damage I've already done to the enemy NPC, it's already going into the millions, basically. But this is how games like these work. So a game like this that flies in the face of what a shooter should be, where if you're thinking about a shooter, dude, you should have your hand up in the air. You should have your weapon and your, everything ADS, and you should be shooting bad guys. Why are you not shooting bad guys, and why are they dying? Welcome to the world of RPGs. This is where the rules are slightly different. The rules don't necessarily follow everything that you would think about when it comes to rules of playing these games. This guy's trying to hit me with a drone there. And I pick up the keys, or I pick up a lot more of these stats. That's pretty much this play style. There are other play styles that you can use. You can use other equipment and other items. This is why you can spend thousands of hours playing The Division, and it is a looter shooter. So I get the loot from here. I don't need it. It has a gear stat named Unhinged, which is based on, weapon damage, based on stability and accuracy and all kinds of stuff. So you have to sit here and actually read them. A lot of people did not jive with The Division when the game came out. And I did this on purpose to show you how very similar this game is to Gotham Knights. Not only is that the case, these activities around the world also reset like Gotham Knights. And I know some people have said, well, all that go solve a crime is not really my cup of tea. I understand fully. I get it. Because for the most part, if you're not really dialed into video games like these, you're not necessarily going to want to do this. But looking at the gear items in Gotham Knights and looking at the stats, this is exactly what makes your gameplay and makes your character quite unique and special. You can decide not to deal with that, but you're not necessarily going to fully enjoy what the game has to offer you. And this kind of game design really does fly in the face of a lot of what people say. Now, what's really interesting is, and many of you remember I mentioned that, SkillUp is one who said in his review, why do I need these stats on my gear? He basically made that comment saying, I'm looking at these, elemental damage and elemental resistance and all this stuff, and I can't seem to figure out why they have them in this game. Did you guys know that SkillUp, let me show you guys something, because I've said this many times, a lot of people don't really, they seem to not believe it. SkillUp used to make videos on The Division. He made videos on The Division 1, the first game. If we go all the way down, this is his channel. He used to make stuff about DPS formulas, how you can basically make and build your gear. This is 7 years ago. And I used to make videos on The Division 2 somewhere around that time as well. He also made Division 2 videos before he finally decided, I'm going to go on my own and I'm going to start doing video game reviews. So when SkillUp was making the I do not recommend Gotham Knights video, let me show you guys here. Where is it at? When he made the I do not recommend Gotham Knights, a lot of his reasons were not necessarily for some of the issues that we know. Some of them were about items and elements in Gotham Knights that are present in The Division, a game which he heavily covered years ago. A game that has elemental damage. Many of you don't believe that, a game like The Division has elemental damage and so on and so forth. Because Gotham Knights has its RPG elements, a lot of people have said, well, I don't think this is it's understandable if you don't like it. But to say that game design having this is not something that makes good game design is a flawed set of reasonings, in my opinion. Like, you can't conclude that. Because I can show you my fire damage build. You want to see it? If you have time, I'll show you. Let me show you what I do. And this is my favorite way to actually play. I do like status effects build. Not only is this fire damage, I also have bleed attached to it. So let's see if we can go and trouble these guys over here, because they're sitting right there. This is also another territory area, just like you see in Gotham Knights, where these enemy NPCs, they gather in one spot. They're either committing a crime or they're in a hideout or whatnot. And you're going to see these things in action. It's not it's not something that is foreign, to video games. It's something that game designers have used for a very long time. Pardon me, we don't have grappling in this game. You actually have to run everywhere. You know what I mean? So forgive me if you're a little if you're a little upset with how this is all working out, because I gotta run. I mean, you get me. Let me shorten your wait time. So I'm over here at this territory area, and I'm using a burn and bleed setup. If I burn enemy NPCs, you're going to see that my burn damage, and I'm going to set up my bleed just to kind of back me up a little bit because enemies are going to try to run around. You're going to realize that not only am I dealing all this damage, my damage is spreading as well to enemies within a specific set of proxy parameters. So if an enemy is actually close to the area where I burn another enemy and they die there, or they die from bleed or from burn, other enemies in the vicinity will basically get that. So look at all these enemies coming out. They are all going to... I'm not shooting a single bullet. It's just burn and bleed. That's it. Once this guy dies, he's going to transmit the bleed to another person. Now, there's a parameter that's set for these guys to kind of get a little upset, and it's like a rage functionality. So I'm going to shoot him with a few bullets, and it's going to kill him. He's dead. Do you see that? Somebody else is hiding around me somewhere. Let me see where they are. I'm going to put this out there. All right. Look, that guy's running. He doesn't want to die. He's burning. I'm not going to shoot anymore. That burn is basically going to take... It should take him out. If my build and my stats are done correctly, he should be dead. He's dead. So if you don't necessarily vibe or jive with video games like these, you're going to not like Gotham Knights for the most part. I saw a lot of different content creators when The Division came out, like Big Fry, Angry Joe. A lot of them were saying all these things like, oh, you know, The Division, you know, everyone's a bullet sponge. We can't really understand, nor can we understand or get what the game is about. But many of them just needed to admit, this game is just not for us. And they gave the game, Angry Joe gave The Division 1 a 6 out of 10, the first Division game. He gave it a 6 out of 10. If you know the fan base behind these games, you'd be very shocked as to how many of them still see these games and go for them. So when you see a lot of folk like, you know, down with Gotham Knights and, you know, basically continuing to play the game because they look at the systems and they say these systems, they kind of appeal to us in a sense, I guess you can understand why this is actually a thing, because your ability systems and your gear systems do play into how you actually play the game. I've shown different gameplay parameters. I've shown you using different builds here on Gotham Knights, how I set up my characters, and I'm able to go ahead and leverage them, using them, you know, a lot of their different elements in here. Let me show you guys, just so if, in case you're, you know, in case you're still wondering, if you go into your database, you're going to see that in your combat gives you a lot of different parameters when it comes to elemental damage, elemental effect, elemental resistance, momentum abilities. These things all gel together, and they're all embedded in your gear to be able to give you the very best, you know, leverage that you can, the upper hand against all the enemy classes that are in the game. So your stats do matter in Gotham Knights. Don't let anybody fool you. This is not Borderlands where the gun is supposedly doing some weird random stuff. This is just like The Division where the gear, they basically all look alike. But when you actually pay very close attention to each individual piece and each individual item and each individual stat, you start to see how they actually work in conjunction to actually to work together to be able to get you the build. These 4 items I'm using, with this yellow item, with this, you know, exotic item, it's all a formula within the game, and Skill Up approves. I know, it's crazy, isn't it? Thanks for watching. Peace out.